So, in the last video, I was explaining why I thought that there is potential for progressive policies, basically, but only if action is taken to get those policies represented by elected officials who hold the same positions. So that was pretty clear. So in this video, I guess I just want to talk about um, what might prevent that from happening in more detail. And I talked about one of the reasons, which is if those policies are blocked by the institutional Democratic Party, right? Of course, the other thing that might block them is the existing political regime or administration, however you wanna call it. So the reason that could be an issue is the only reason the Sanders policies are popular now is because people want them in the political climate. It's not, I don't believe, impossible for the political climate to shift. And so how would that happen? If you look at the president's approval numbers right now, so this is like April 11th or something, and it's been pretty consistent, February, March, April as well. So about 3 months, it's been low 40s, high 30s at best, which is like we have very bad comparative to other presidents in this period. However, there is situations where conceivably that could change, and the only one that I'm really thinking of is some sort of enormous natural disaster, um, or more likely would be a war, some sort of major war. As we speak, it looks like there's some signs that the administration may be moving towards a war with North Korea. And if it's a war like the war we had in Iraq, well, that was a war, and a lot of people died on the Iraqi side, and a certain number of Americans died as well, 3,000 something like that. So, that was bad, but that wasn't going to change the mood of the country. So, what might change the mood of the country would be a large scale war, something that involves a draft, probably, and hundreds of thousands or millions of soldiers and from the draft and large numbers of deaths, potentially maybe something hitting the United States as well, a missile or something, although that's not as likely. Or, it could even escalate into something beyond control, into a nuclear conflict, and in that case, all bets are off. So that has to be stopped at all cost. That's really a worst case scenario. So, yeah, and that would change the mood of the country drastically, I would bet. Drastically. If we came out of that conflict victorious by some measure, then it very well might reshape the political climate of the country to supporting the policies of the current administration, which seem to be so based on what I have been have been looking at, it amounts to a repeal of the New Deal policies in the 30s. A lot of them, not all of them. That it's an exaggeration to say that it's all of them, but a reduction, a sharp reduction beyond what we've seen before. Historically, you saw continuity with those policies, or better, you saw increases. So we may be looking at some major rollbacks, or maybe the most significant rollbacks that we've ever seen. And that's not going to be supported. But what would the political climate look like if everything was reshaped in a major war? I guess it would depend on what the economic outcome was as well after the war. If people are devastated and starving, then they're not going to support that, um, of course. But on the other hand, if it boosted industry in some way, and things are doing reasonably okay, then maybe in the afterglow of nationalism, it would be possible to do quite a lot. Of course, there's also the concern about a suspension of democracy, or an erosion of democracy. David Frum, the conservative intellectual, has talked a lot about that, and it's a pretty plausible situation. Something similar to what Russia has done in their system. Of course, the difference would be the United States is not Russia. We have a long history of democracy. We are probably after Britain, the world's longest um, continuous democracy when all is said and done. So I don't see norms being changed to that extent very easily. Um, that seems that seems extreme, and it doesn't seem plausible that um, enough of the public would support it. Because of course, poor people don't have to support it, not really. Maybe not even a lot of the middle class people, but you have to have the military to support you for sure. You have to have a lot of industry and the business class be not supporting you necessarily, but they can't be actively trying to get rid of you. So, for those reasons, it would take a reshaping of the current political climate to get away with certain things. Yeah, and you could see it with the Muslim ban, which there was an attempt to pass that. Well, that was rescinded by the courts, and the courts weren't defied. And if the courts were defied, then I don't think that that would end well for the Trump administration. Not at this time. There's too much support for the rule of law. To overturn real constitutional uh, things, that will take more time, many years, or a major war, and he won't get many years without the major war. His popularity is such that it's not going to happen. Even if they do a little bit of voter suppression here and there, the counter reaction is going to be so strong. The public is going to turn against him so decisively. Even if the Democrats nominate another corporatist that isn't all that inspiring, the anti-Trump energy itself will be strong enough to get rid of him in 4 years. And that's if the Russia scandal doesn't get him pushed out, which there's a high probability it will, or if he doesn't have dementia, or if a million other things. We're not going to get to the end of 4 years with him as president unless there's a major war. And so then that begs the question, well, what would you do if you were him? We know he's self-interested. We know he's not that smart, but he has smart people around him, and he knows how to make a rational calculation at least. And that rational calculation may very well be, got to start a war. Nothing else for it. Got to start a war. And in his place, I would have to do that. In his place, if I was dedicated to holding on to my power at all cost and my image and all this kind of stuff, then I don't see any other course of action for him to take. So in that case, the only constraint really on him starting a war, given everything we said, which is one, he won't make it to the end without a war. Two, he won't be reelected even if he did make it to the end without a war. Three, he's committed all kinds of crimes and will be charged with stuff and will get into major trouble. So there's no exit for him. What can he do except start a war? But what if he's not allowed to do that? So you have to worry about the constraints from the national security establishment. Would the military let him do that? Would they? And I actually don't know. It seems so far that action in Syria, they think that's a good idea. There's been no sign that they were going to oppose him on action in North Korea either. So the national security establishment may not prove an obstacle, and so there may be mutual interest there. Their interest in the war and his interest in preserving his presidency through a creation of chaos through a major war. So yeah, my analysis is he's got to take the first decent opportunity to start a major war, and there's not a lot of choice there.